Hello, Packer fans, wherever you may be. It's time for another edition of the Pack Attack Cast for October 9th, 2025. We are inching closer and closer to a game day. I know it's been quite some time since we've seen our beloved Green Bay Packers on the field, but today is Thursday. We've got 3 short days before the Packers are on the field. We're going to start talking about the game and keys to the game tomorrow. But today we're going to do 2 things. I'm going to get you up to speed on some injury news and notes we received from practice. And then also, we're going to talk about our final self-scouting section where we talk about the linebacker play for the Green Bay Packers through the bye week. So let's go through these injury news and notes first and try to delve into what they mean, not just for this week's game, but for the rest of the season. But also, we're going to talk about those linebackers and how they performed so far. So, on Wednesday, the Packers had their only padded practice of the week. The Packers are allowed roughly 1 padded practice per week per NFL news and notes. So this is a big practice on Wednesday because it's the most physical practice of the week, and it gives the Packers the best opportunity to figure out where the players stand for playing on Sunday. The Packers listed 14 players on their first injury report, including 11 who were limited or did not practice on Wednesday. Again, that's very important because Wednesday was our padded practice. So Devontae Wyatt and right tackle Anthony Belton did not practice on Wednesday. Coach LaFleur said Wyatt is week to week, and he said Belton is not close to returning from his injury. What that tells me, if Wyatt didn't practice in the most physical practice of the week, he's probably not going to be playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. We could probably live without Wyatt this week because the Bengals are only getting about 60 yards on the ground per game, which is something the Packers can certainly manage with their current list of defensive tackles. So what we're probably going to see happen here is we're going to have the defensive tackles do the best they can against the run, and there's going to be a sense of urgency from the linebackers to fill in and get some extra tackles behind the line of scrimmage as need be to support the run defense. So they're probably going to shift things more run defense centric, try to make the Bengals one-dimensional with Joe Flacco as the quarterback. That's pretty amazing, and we're going to talk about that after we get through the news and notes. The current starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals is not what we thought it was going to be just a couple days ago. So we're going to talk about that. Offensive linemen Zach Tom and Aaron Banks both practiced but were limited. LaFleur said Zach Tom is feeling good after the week off. The fact that he didn't really say anything about Aaron Banks leads me to believe that Zach Tom is more likely to play this week than Aaron Banks. And if that is the case, then Jordan Morgan will slip into that spot for Aaron Banks. So we do have enough depth for Aaron Banks or Zach Tom to miss this game. If they both miss this game, we might be in a situation very similar to where we were against the Cowboys, where we have limited depth and playmakers on the offensive line, which is really going to impact things like the running game on a consistent basis. So we'll have to see when we're closer into the week to see if Zach Tom and Aaron Banks practice. If they both practice on Friday and maybe 1 or 2 of them get a full practice in on Friday, then that really increases the chance that both of them will play on Sunday. Quarterback Nate Hobbs is on the concussion protocol after getting a concussion against the Cowboys. And it's really hard to tell with a concussion when the player is going to be back because there are certain neurological things that a player has to be able to get past to play in the game on Sunday. So the Packers might decide today at practice that Nate Hobbs is good to go for the weekend, or it might be as late as Saturday, perhaps, before they decide that Nate Hobbs is ready to play. The good thing is, since he's suffering from a concussion and not a physical injury, it shouldn't impact his ability to be a key part of the team if he ends up playing on Sunday. If he doesn't play on Sunday, then we're probably going to see a lot of the looks like we saw late in the game against the Cowboys. Hopefully we'll have some better results because, let's face it, Joe Flacco is not Dak Prescott. So I'm feeling like the secondary will hold up just fine, even if Nate Hobbs is out this week. We have some new injuries, and I want to touch on them in some greater depth. Kingsley Enagbare has an ankle injury. He's limited. That sounds like something that just happened in practice. Kicker Brandon McManus suffered a quad injury in practice, so this is not tied to the game against the Dallas Cowboys. Offensive lineman Jordan Morgan has a knee injury, but he was a full practice, so I think we'll be fine there. And Savion Williams was limited due to a groin injury. Now, the biggest concern here out of those new injuries for me is Brandon McManus. We already know special teams, kicking in particular, has been a big trouble spot for the Packers so far this season. It cost them a win against the Browns, and it probably forced them into a tie against the Cowboys. So hopefully Brandon McManus can shake this off over the next couple days. They'll probably give him a lot of veteran rest, and they'll definitely see how he feels Saturday. But don't be surprised if the Packers sign a kicker just for this week for depth purposes if they don't have a feel for him improving probably in practice today. So we might have an update on this as early as tomorrow. If you see the Packers signing a kicker, then that probably indicates that Brandon McManus is 50-50 or less to play in the game. Luckily, the Packers do have two open roster spots, so they can easily sign a kicker for this week as a safety protection against injury. Now, one thing that is working in McManus's benefit as well as the team is that the team is at home this week against the Bengals, and that really helps because sometimes things like quad injuries, hamstring injuries, soft tissue injuries are exacerbated by travel. So the fact that the Packers are staying at home increases the chances that Brandon McManus will be in on Sunday. So we're going to watch that very closely. Now, talking about the game, we did get news yesterday officially that the Cincinnati Bengals are making a change at the quarterback position. And it's really interesting to see them bring a quarterback from the Browns, which we recently played, and putting them in the starting lineup after less than a week of practice. Realistically, the Bengals' new quarterback is only going to get about 1 or 2 walkthroughs, probably not even a full practice. Now, obviously, he's very experienced. He's an elder statesman, if you will, for the NFL. But his physicality is very limited, and the Packers succeeded in playing him when they played the Cleveland Browns. He was not the player who beat the Green Bay Packers. It was special teams self-destructing that beat the Green Bay Packers. So I think the Packers are going to do fine with this quarterback change. I don't think it really impacts anything in the game plan. They're still going to have a very similar game plan, and they've already played Joe Flacco once. So if anything, this probably benefits the Packers because they have experience this year of playing Joe Flacco. So positions that are keyed in on watching the quarterback, like the safety position, for example, will probably have a benefit because they've seen Joe Flacco in action just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago because of the bye week. So what we're going to do now is I want to talk about the last segment in our series of linebacker play. We're going to take a look at linebacker play so far this season and how it has impacted the games, how they can improve over the bye week perhaps, and what we're looking for the rest of the season. And the linebackers have really been a glue for this defense. They've found ways to fill in the gaps when the defensive line has had some struggles. And, that's really one of the depths of the Packers defense that really doesn't get talked about enough, is how amazing our linebacker group is. It wasn't 4 or 5 years ago that you just knew the Packers were going to have the worst group of linebackers on the field just about every week. But now the Packers have a strength at the linebacker position, and that starts off with Edgerrin Cooper. Cooper has continued to play at the same high level that he played last year. While Parson gets all the attention, Cooper is the glue that holds the team together, and the linebackers help clean up the mistakes along the defensive line. He's also been fantastic in coverage, which only gets more important when we get to the playoffs, especially against teams that have significant tight ends, and how we can use Cooper to shut down the opposing tight ends as much as possible. That really is a strength of his game right now in coverage. I expect more of the same from Cooper throughout the rest of the season. There's no reason that, barring a physical injury, that he will not continue to get better every time he plays. Next up, we have Quay Walker. Quay Walker has quietly had the best season to date. He seems to really understand where his role is in the defense. We started to see that in the middle of last year, and then he had some injuries. But this year, he's putting it all together. His physical well-being plus understanding the defense is really making Quay Walker play at a very high level. His solo tackles are top 10 at the position. If there's one frustrating thing about Quay Walker so far this season, is the fact that he literally feels like he has an interception in his hands every week and he drops it. That seems to happen almost every game. He drops an easy interception. Now, the good part is he is impacting the play. He is stopping that play on defense. But if he could just catch a couple of those interceptions, it would go a long way to improving his play from a turnover standpoint, which is really the one weak point I see with Quay Walker right now. I expect him to continue to have the same high level of play all season. He's likely moving on after this year. I don't know if the Packers will have the finances to keep him unless he wants to take a team-friendly deal, so he has a lot to play for. Next up is Isaiah McDuffie. McDuffie has had limited snaps, but he's playing his best year ever. While only seeing action on early downs, McDuffie has been the solid mortar of the linebacker room. He's very good with solo tackles. He's very good against the run. Coverage is a liability for McDuffie, but usually on early downs, that's not a factor. So I believe the defense is taking the best of McDuffie by using him on early downs. And I expect more of the same from McDuffie for the rest of the season, barring an injury. So there you go. We have our news and notes from injuries for this week, and I think those are going to be something we're going to watch throughout the rest of the week. Tomorrow, we're going to start talking about keys to the game, and we're going to look at the matchups, Bengals versus Packers, as we get closer and closer to game day on Sunday afternoon. We're going to have an episode on Saturday where we do our pregame episode, and we're also going to have some last-minute news and notes on Sunday before the game. So we're going to have plenty of coverage for you before Packers versus Bengals. If you haven't already done so, give us a subscribe, and we'll see you next episode. As always, go Pack Go.